that was the truth. I'd never been a man who used to be a woman. I was always a woman living as a man. And when I confessed that, the Holy Spirit went, and it blew into me. And in that moment, I saw I had to go back to being a woman.
Welcome to the Weird Christian Podcast. I am your host, Samuel Delgado, and this is episode 7. I interviewed KathyGrace Duncan of Portland Fellowship. She shares her story of how she always felt like she was born into the wrong body, to then leading ministries at church as a male, to then stepping down in order to embrace her God-given gender. We talk about forgiving her father, what it means to be a woman, and so much more. So with no further ado, let's get weird. I'd like to start us off in prayer.
Yeah.
That's cool with you, and then we'll go from there. All right.
Yeah, please.
All right. Well, let's pray.
Okay.
God, I thank you for KathyGrace and the work you've done in her life and the change you've brought in her life, the freedom that you've given her, and how you've empowered her and emboldened her to lead others to you and help others who also struggled in that same area. I pray over her ministry, and thank you for her witness. I pray over this interview that you would lead those that need to hear this to listen, give them ears to listen, give them open hearts to receive what we're talking about today. And we just thank you for your grace, and we give you all the glory and praise. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
All right. So, you've just got such an incredible story. So I wanted to, sit down and talk with you about it. But I'd like to just kind of start there before, we get into anything, and just kind of hear, your faith journey, how you grew up, and how you came to know Christ.
Okay. Well, the struggle started when I was very young, probably 4 or 5. That's as far back as I can remember anyways. And during that time, I would ride my tricycle over to pick up my girlfriend, and we were going to get married. And this was before kindergarten. And so I always felt that I should have been a boy. I was born into the wrong body. And somehow I also knew that that was not normal. So I really kept it inside. I really kept it to myself. And then I started school, and my mom made a lot of my clothes. So I wore dresses all the time, which was really hard, because I already hated who I was as a girl. And I continued on through school with just this struggle of feeling that I should have been a boy, and, being attracted to girls at a very young age and pretending that I would have a girlfriend. And then when my little brother was born, I was 7, and he was adored by my dad. And so, that gave me the lie that I could be replaced. And in order to, be affirmed and loved, I had to be a boy. On top of that, my home life was very dysfunctional, and my dad was verbally and emotionally abusive to my mom. And so as I viewed this, my lies that I took away were that women were hated, women were weak, and women were vulnerable. Now, I didn't know this at the time. It wasn't until I started the journey out that the Lord revealed those lies. But that was what I based my whole belief system on, that I should have been a boy. I was born into the wrong body. And so, I continued to grow up. And then between the ages of 10 and 12, I was sexually molested, which affirmed the lies that I was weak, hated, and vulnerable. At the age of 16, I got a car and I started to live a double life. By then, I had a friend next door. My parents had a rental house, and they rented to a family, and they had a son, and he was 2 years younger than me. And eventually I shared with him that I wanted to become a boy. And his response was like, yes, this is great. Now I have a brother, and I was like, wow, okay, I am on the right path. It totally affirmed the path that I was taking. Well, as a child, I grew up Lutheran. So, and I'm not badging or, demeaning the Lutheran religion at all. But for me, it was like I knew about God. I felt like I was a God stalker. I knew about God, but I didn't know him. And so I was aware of him and just never really had that relationship.
Yeah.
When I turned 19, I was so desperate to begin to live as a man because I had been reading about it and understood that that was possible. And I just needed to take hormones. So I found a doctor who, questioned me, and I decided to start the hormones, and I changed my name. I also moved out from my house, and I moved in with a single mom family. And my first injection, I'm like, hey, I am free. I'm finally free. I'm free of being a woman. I can get away from this. This is amazing. It was like this truly a euphoric feeling.
Yeah.
And so as I continued to live with this single mom, and she had 2 daughters, and they went to this church, and they kept bugging me to go to church with them. And so finally I agreed. I'm like, all right, because I mostly agreed to get them off my back. I just I didn't want to, they continue to hassle me. So I went, and during one of the church services, there was this, they talked about Jesus. And I'm like, I have never heard about this guy. I've only heard about God. And so who's Jesus? And the more I heard about him, the more I'm like, I think I want to get to know this guy. He sounds pretty cool. And one night there was an altar call. So I went down and I took the altar call, and I accepted the Lord as my savior that night. Now I'd only been in the lifestyle for 2 weeks, right? Then I get saved.
Yeah.
And I woke up the next morning and I was like, wow, did that even work? I feel the same, I don't know. So the next Sunday I took another altar call, woke up, and it was like, okay, nothing's changed. And finally a third Sunday night, I'm like, all right, I'm going to get it right this time. I'm going to make it work. And so I went down and took an altar call, and the pastor said, you know what? The first time it really does work. It takes, you're good. And so I was like, okay. So I got up the next morning, still didn't feel any different. I didn't hear from the Lord. I didn't hear him say, you have to go back. There was no lightning and thunder or any of that stuff. So I thought, you know what? He must be okay with my lifestyle because he's not saying anything.
Yeah.
And I'm so new in the Lord. How would I know? Anyways, So I continued on with my life. And I had quit my job so I could fully live into the lifestyle. And the woman that I worked with, the woman that I went to church with got me a job at where she worked. And so I was working there as a man, and my dad had found out where I was working. So he went in there and he told the manager, that's not a man that's working for you, that's my daughter. And so I got fired from my job for that. Now this is early 80s, probably 82, 83. So it wasn't a very common thing for, transgender people.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, when my dad was in there, the woman that I went to church with overheard the conversation. And so she went and told the pastors, hey, I heard this, And so I think it was about a week later, I get called into the pastor's office, and he said to me, hey, we're hearing rumors about you. And I want to know, who are you? Who are you really? And so at that point I said, well, I'm a man who used to be a woman. And his response to me was, we love you, but we just can't have you going to church here. So I was like, okay. So I left, and I don't know how, but somehow in my heart, I knew that was not the heart of the Lord. That was the heart of man.
Wow.
I don't know how I knew that, but I just did. And so eventually I found a different job. And at that job, I was probably there a couple of years, and I met a girl and we started dating. She was a believer. And I started going church with her. And, I saw that they had an orchestra, and I'd played an instrument. I'd played French horn in high school. So I'm like, hey, they need a French horn. So I got involved in the orchestra and really began to follow the Lord. And during that time too, I understood that I needed to read the Bible. When I was younger, growing up Lutheran, we only read the Bible on the weekend. And I'm not saying that was a church thing. That was probably my dad, saying, well, this is how we do this. This is, you read the Bible on Sundays and you're good for the rest of the week. And,
Yeah.
So when I would see her reading her Bible, I'm like, what are you doing? It's like a Wednesday. And she's like, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Really? So I learned, reading the Bible is important and you can do it at any time. It doesn't have to only be on Sundays. So that was an eye-opening thing for me. And we dated probably for about 5 years, and we broke up. And when we broke up, I decided to stay at the church and she left. And then I also jumped right into a rebound relationship. And we dated probably for about a year, and I'm still going to church, still in the orchestra, trying to figure out the will of the Lord and all of that. And one morning in this relationship, I woke up and I realized, oh my gosh, she's my mom and I'm my dad. Everything I vowed that I would not become, I was, and everything I hated, I had become all of those things. And so I decided to break up because I'm like, I can't treat her like this. I vowed I would be the man my dad was not. What am I doing? I'm exactly like him. And I didn't want to be that man. So we break up, and I'm driving one night to orchestra practice. And the Lord said to me, will you now? Will you now? And so I felt like he's asking me, are you going to follow me now? Now, are you going to do this? And so I take this inventory of my heart, and I'm like, there's no reason why I can't. I have nothing in the way. So I said, yes, Lord, I will. And I continued on to orchestra practice, and life kind of felt the same as I knew it. And but then I also began to open my heart and my life everywhere to the Lord. I was constantly at church, and probably within a year, I was involved in the junior high ministry. So I led a small group of boys, and then I was leading a men's Bible study. And I was also involved in the college age group as well as the young adults, wow, as a man. And this went on for about 4 years. And in those 4 years, the Lord really wooed me, and I was just so hungry for him. I felt like I could never get enough, and there wasn't enough I could do for him. And at the same time, the Lord brought some spiritual parents to me. And Gary, who was my spiritual dad, the Lord really used him to begin to work on my dad's stuff and kind of like soften the ground of my heart there to maybe think about the Lord as my dad, right? And I was like, But there was so much healing that went on in those 4 years. And then I had gone to a junior high retreat, and I had another girlfriend at the time. And when we came back, I'd gotten her involved in the junior high ministry. When we came back from a junior high retreat, I was exhausted. It was a skiing trip. So, I was just so tired, and I was looking forward to just being home with junior high kids can wear you out. You know what? They're exhausting. And so my girlfriend calls me and she's like, hey, can we go to evening church? I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And I said, well, and she goes, come on, please. I'll meet you there. I'm like, okay. So I went, and after the service, we were standing in a group talking. I saw my spiritual dad approaching me, and I thought, And he said to me, hey, can I talk to you? And I'm like, sure. And I was like, I think I know what this can I talk to you thing is. So I followed him. There was a prayer room behind the sanctuary. And when I went in there, the pastor of the college age group was in there. And as soon as I walked in and I saw him, I'm like, yep, I'm going to be confronted. Here we go. And now Dave, he was the pastor of the college age group. And, we hung out. He was my friend. So I knew him, right? Yeah. And so we all sit down, and Dave says to me, so we're hearing some rumors about you, and I just want to know, who are you? Who are you really? Very same question. This time I responded with, I'm a woman living as a man. And that was the truth. I'd never been a man who used to be a woman. I was always a woman living as a man. And when I confessed that, the Holy Spirit went, and it blew into me. And in that moment, I saw I had to go back to being a woman. There was no other, there was only plan A. This was the plan. This is what I had to do. And I saw the next 2 weeks of my life that I had to go, and I had to meet with each pastor and step down from those ministries. And I needed to tell them why I was doing this. And I needed to go break up with my girlfriend. And that was just a matter of fact thing. When I look back on that, that amazes me, because, we're kind of starting to talk about marriage, and so I loved her, and I'm like, nope, got to cut this off. Boom. And
Wow.
so I asked Dave, I said, so Dave, what do you think I should do? And I didn't share any of the stuff with him that I had just seen. And he said, well, you could live as a eunuch. I'm like, no. He's like, okay, well, you could just live celibate, you could be a celibate man. And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, how about you, well, maybe you could, you should, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you should do.
Yeah.
And I said, well, can I share with you what I've seen? And he's like, absolutely. So I shared with him, I need to go back to being a woman and I need to step down from these ministries. And he's like, okay, you know what? I'll be with you in that. I'll set up the appointments for you and I'll be with you in those appointments as you do this. And I said, and I need to do it in the next 2 weeks. And he's like, okay, we'll make it happen for you. In total different response. Here's this pastor's like, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to be with you in it.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah. And he did exactly that. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. The very fascinating thing is that I went into work the next day. They had no clue what just happened Sunday night. They had no clue that I was a woman living as a man. They knew nothing. And I go in and the manager says, I need to talk to you. And I go in and I sit down. He's like, I just want you to know we have to let you go. You're fired. So go get your stuff and, go ahead and leave for the rest of it. And I'm like, okay. So I gathered my stuff, walking out to my truck and I'm like, what just happened? But there was a part of me that understood that the Lord was clearing the way for me. He was just making this way. So, the pastor of the church had got me the contact information for the Portland Fellowship. So I contacted the women's ministry leader there and we started talking and she's like, yeah, why don't you come and be a part of the program? Now I look like a man. So for her to look at me and go, welcome to the women's group, looking like a man, I can only imagine what she's like. She told me later that she was looking at me thinking, there's got to be a woman in there somewhere. She was really looking.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was living up in Vancouver, Washington, and I moved back to Oregon. And I moved in with 2 women that were also part of the Portland Fellowship program. And I started going to the Portland Fellowship for my healing. And it took about probably 5 years in the process. And the Lord did amazing things during that time. One of them, I had been praying. I found this graveyard that I could go to pray. And I loved it because I could walk around freely. And, it had kind of a view. Where it was kind of up on a mountain. So I could look down into the valley. It was an amazing place for a graveyard. And so I would go up there every day and I would spend at least an hour up there just in prayer because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know, where to go, what to do, what this was going to look like, and, so I started praying to him and by then I had stopped the hormones and I was afraid. I'm like, am I going to get up some morning and look all deformed? I don't know. What's the ramifications of this?
Yeah.
So one of my pursuits of the Lord is I began to ask him, I'm like, so Lord, can you change me? I still shave, my voice, my hair, I need all these things changed. Like yesterday, you're calling me to be this woman and look how I look.
Right.
And I pursued him probably for about 2 months on that because I was so desperate. I'm like, I got to look different. I got to be different. You're calling me to do this. And that's different. I don't know how to be different right now. Yeah. And finally, the Lord spoke to me and he said, I don't care about those things. I'm like, okay, well, you're calling me back to be, you don't care about these things? He's like, no, I don't care about those things. Okay, different question. Why don't you care about those things? And he said, I don't care about those things because I'm after your heart. It's like, oh, and this tremendous weight lifted off me because I thought I had to be presentable as a woman before I could go back to being a woman. And he's like, no, we need to deal with your heart. And so I was like, okay. So I began to ask him about, what do I do? I don't know. How do I work this out? And he continued. One thing that I discovered is that this wasn't really about me living as a man. It wasn't a sexual issue. It was totally a relational issue. Looking at the places where I'd been rejected, looking at the molestation, looking at the places where I had been abandoned, even though my dad was present emotionally, he wasn't. Same with my mom. Looking at all those places that should have been fed into as a kid and they just weren't. And so figuring out how to meet those unmet needs in the Lord, and going through the Portland Fellowship program helped me to understand that, some of the roots and the causes. And at one point in the teaching, they were talking about dad, and what can you call the Lord and what can't you call him? What's the names that you can't call him? And there was this big list, and I'm checking them off going, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I don't have a problem with calling the Lord dad or papa or any of those things. Well, the very next day I go into prayer, and as I begin to pray, I'm like, Lord, and he's like, when you pray, I want you to call me daddy. It's like, oh, that's the name I can't call you. And I said, okay, well, then we're done, because I was not going to do it. So I left.
Wow.
I'm there like 5-10 minutes. Done, not doing that. So the next day, thinking maybe he'd forgotten, it'd been 24 hours. And so I went back and I started to pray, and I said, Lord, and he's like, yeah, when you pray, I want you to call me daddy. I'm like, then we're done. And so for 2 weeks, I'd go up there, Lord, yeah, call me daddy. Yep, we're done. Lord, call me daddy. Yeah, we're done. 2 weeks.
Wow.
And finally, I'm getting desperate because I missed my conversations with him. That was my peace that I had. That was the thing I could really stand on. Yeah, I'm working through all this stuff, but it was that relational need with him that I was really missing.
Yeah.
And so on my drive to the graveyard, I thought, what if I risk? What if I do that? What will happen? And then I thought, okay, well, I'm giving them that spot as my dad, and how is he going to treat me? Is he going to be abusive to me? Is he going to call me names? Is, all those things, traumatic things that had happened with my dad started running through my mind. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. And another reason why I didn't want to call him dad or daddy, it was because I felt like I was swearing at him. It was such a dirty name to me.
Yeah.
And then I thought, but what if I risk? What if he's not like my dad? What if he's not? I mean, I had no way of really knowing. And so I thought, what, I'm gonna risk, and so I go up there and I start to pray, and the Lord said, yeah, I want you to call me daddy. I'm like, all right. I'm thinking, I am obviously not going to change your mind about this. We've been doing this for 2 weeks and you're not moving. So I need to do something different here. So there was a curb where I walked around. So I sat down on this curb and I mustered all the courage that I had. And I said, Daddy, and when I did, something just broke inside me. And I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. I mean, I cried so hard that my sides hurt. That's how hard I cried. And once I was able to stop sobbing, this rage, this anger, this deep anger rose up inside of me. And on this curb where I was sitting, there was some grass right there on the other side. And so I took my fist and I pounded with everything I had on the ground, yelling, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. And once I released all of that, I realized, oh, I'm praying here. And I was just talking to the Lord. And I'm like, Lord, I'm so sorry. I don't hate you. I don't hate you. Because, I just called him daddy. And now I'm yelling at him that I hate him. And I'm like, Lord, I don't hate you. I don't hate you. And he said to me, I know, but you had to for a moment. And I just saw all this. I don't even know. I can't even describe what it looked like, but I saw all this stuff just go into the cross. They say, take it before the cross. And it was like this release. And I saw it just be absorbed into the cross, And I was like, okay, wow, I don't know what just happened, but there was like this enormous amount of weight. There was like this relief in a way. Though I pretty much cried the whole day, off and on. And I think I look like one of those goldfish, where the eyes are really big. I felt like my eyes were bulging out because of so much crying. But there was so much freedom that came with that. And it was soon after that the Lord began to take me into this process of forgiving my dad. And that that took a while too, because I'm like, you don't deserve this, and finally it got through to me. It's not what he deserved. It's what I needed to do to release him, so I could walk further in my freedom. So I did that. I worked through the forgiveness. Much healing came from that, just understanding that I'm not who my dad says I am. I am who the Lord says I am. And then the Lord said, now I want you to reconcile with him. I'm like, are you kidding me? First I have to call you daddy, and then I have to forgive him. Now I have to reconcile. Yeah. And so I was obedient, and I did that. And my dad and I did reconcile. And at one point I was able to meet up with my dad, and my two brothers were there. And my dad had a pool table. We grew up playing pool. That was one of our family things that we did. And so in the midst of this pool game, I'm watching my dad, and I'm like, man, Lord, he's the same jerk. He has not changed. This guy has not changed. And the Lord said to me, I'm not asking him to change. I'm asking you. I was like, great. It's always on me, is what it felt like. But I did learn how to navigate that with my dad. And the Lord showed me that my dad's heart, and that my dad did love me. He just didn't know how to do that. He's functioning from a deficit. So how do you love? And he was never taught love. He didn't know love. He was never loved. So how do you love when you don't know that? And so that really gave me the grace to continue forward in this relationship with him until he began to get abusive with me. And then the Lord said, you know what, you're free from this obligation. Yeah. And so I cut my relationship with my dad, and he died like 5 years later. And I was so grateful for that time, because when he passed, there was no regret. There was no questions. What if I would have, And so that was amazing. And another one of the things that the Lord did is, in this process, I became so detached, emotionally detached. I didn't know how to feel anything. And I had to get a job as a man, because physically I still look like a man. And I worked for probably a couple of years. The first year out of the lifestyle, I spent the first year just being severely depressed. And I didn't know that that was depression until later. When I look back, I was like, oh my gosh, I was so depressed. It took everything I had to get out of bed, and then everything I had to take a shower, and I was exhausted by then, And then after that year, then I started to work as a man and continue my healing. And at one point I worked at this warehouse, and I had to put some product on a pallet, and I brought the pallet over, and I dropped it. Well, as I dropped it, it went down the front of my leg, just scraped the front of my shin, and that hurt so bad. And I was like, doesn't hurt, doesn't hurt, doesn't hurt. This does not hurt me. This is not. And I kept saying that till, it stopped hurting. And the Lord said to me, and that's how you deal with all of your pain. And I was like, oh, wow. I had no idea. And it was then that the Lord began to attach my emotions again. And at one point I saw him at this huge, it was like a huge operator board. And I don't know if you remember, but they used to take the plugs and they plug in when they connected a call. Yeah. So he's at this huge operator board, and I'm watching, and he's plugging it in, he's plugging this one in, he's taking that one out and putting that one over here. And, he's just doing all this work. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? And so trying to be very quiet, I sneak up behind him. I think I'm sneaking up behind him, and I look over his shoulder, and I see, these are all my emotions, and he's like rewiring them. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And he turns and he looks at me and he goes, these are your emotions. We're going to heal your emotions. I'm like, oh, wow. And sure enough, it was probably a couple of weeks later, I felt this feeling, and it felt really good. And I didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This feels so good. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, but wait, things have felt good in the past and they weren't good. I don't know. And so I said to the Lord, I'm like, I don't know what this is. What do you say? What is this? And the Lord said to me, this is joy. And I was like, this is joy? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I like joy. So he began to walk me through circumstances that I'd hold it out to him. What is this, Lord? I don't know what this is. And he would tell me, this is pain. oh, okay, this is pain. So I would begin to have this frame of reference for the things that I felt. And I began to understand how to walk through those, or these are good, these are bad, this is pain, this is, and how do I begin to look at this pain, you know? And as an adult, I thought, what an amazing thing, because I'm able to deal with pain right then rather than just stuffing it and having it manifest some other way later in life, right?
Yeah.
So that was an amazing healing time. And then I don't know, maybe a year later, I began to have this vision in my head, and I was in this house, and I kept seeing it was like all the plasterboard had been taken off, and there was just these little slats, you know, and I kept looking at that, and it looked like bare walls. And I'm just like, I don't understand what this is. You know, at the same time, I had this feeling too. I just felt empty. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. And I was talking with this guy who was a carpenter, and he was talking about restoring houses. And I'm like, okay, let me ask a question. So when you restore a house, what do you do? And he said, well, we go in and we take it down to the bare walls. And I said, so like down to those slats? And he's like, yeah. I go, why would you do that? And he's like, well, we have to gut the house. And I'm like, oh, that's what I'm feeling. I feel gutted. And he said, we gut the house, and then we look at the plans and we take it back to the original intent of the house. We take it back to the original plan for the house. And I was like, oh. And I realized I feel gutted. I feel gutted. And I kept seeing that picture just about every day. And then finally, one day I was in this house, and, you know, I was feeling gutted, and I could see the walls. And over in the corner, I saw the Lord at this like architect board, like this drawing board. And he had these things all spread out. And I'm like, what is he doing? So again, I try to sneak up on him, you know, and I look over his shoulder, and I realize it's the plans for my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, yeah, these are the plans for your life. And he's just pouring over them. And he was so excited. And I'm like, you know, I didn't get it at first. And at that same time, I was studying Psalm 139. And I realized in there that the Lord knew me. He knew when I rose, he knew when I went to bed, you know, he knew all this stuff about me. And then I also saw in there where it said that, you know, he knit me together in my mother's womb, and then he covered me. And as I studied that, I realized that when he knit me together with everything I needed to be on the inside to be feminine. Same with men. He knit you together with everything you needed on the inside to be masculine. And then he put skin on to represent how I'm wired on the inside. Look at me, girl, you're wired feminine, male, masculine. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, you know, and then it goes on to say, you know, your creation is wonderful. And I know that full well, you know, or your works are wonderful. I know that full well. And I realized I do know that full well. Because when I looked back, when I lived as a man, there's a toughness about men I could not imitate. I couldn't put it on. I tried and tried and tried, but there's a toughness about men I just couldn't imitate. And there was this nurturing quality that was also present. And the more I walked into being the woman that God created me to be, the more that nurturing came. And when I had met with one of the pastors to step down from the junior high ministry, he told me, he said, you know what, this totally makes sense to me now. And I'm like, really? And how is that? And he goes, well, I would watch you with these boys, and you were so nurturing. I kept thinking, what an amazing woman he would be. And I'm like, yeah, okay, surprise. So those are some of the things, as you know, the healing that the Lord did. And I realized that he had to restore my house, this house, because I had created this house and it was not the original intent, you know. And so fast forward, now I'm involved at the Portland Fellowship. I've become a teacher, leading a women's small group. And I was preparing one night for a teaching on identity. And I was thinking about all the things that the Lord had walked me through in restoring my identity. And I suddenly realized I am so free. I am so free. I realized I am not attracted to women anymore. It was just gone. I looked, I searched my heart, and I'm like, I'm just not attracted. That's just not there. And I don't want to live as a man. I'm content being a woman. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I asked the Lord, I'm like, Lord, when did that happen? How did that happen? How did you change my thinking? Because I made a vow I would never go back to being a woman. How did you do that? And I saw the Lord begin to contemplate my question. And he looks up and he says, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, wait, how do you not know? I mean, seriously, how do you not know? And besides, you were there. I know you saw me. I know you walked with me. How do you not know? And the Lord said to me, I never saw you that way. And I was like, oh my gosh. Because what I realized is that he only ever saw me through that intent, through the plans that he had for me as his daughter. Yeah, he knew I lived as a man, but the plans that he had for me, that's all he ever saw me through was as his daughter.
Wow.
And I was undone. I was totally undone, And so I lived as a man for 11 years, and I've been out of that lifestyle for 28, and continue just to seek wholeness. And I joke and I say, you know what? I struggle with normal stuff now. My struggles are like common to women, I really don't struggle with identity or, wanting to be someone different. I'm very content with who God created me to be.
Wow, that's incredible. So I have a few things that I want to follow up on, and then I want to talk a little bit more about Portland Fellowship, and kind of get into some questions that I have prepared. But I think just what's most incredible about your story is you just see God. He was with you all along, and he was patient with you, and we see you just went at his pace. He went at your pace, and it's just a beautiful story about how God just extended his grace, and didn't he overwhelmed you, but not to the point where it was too much for you to bear. Anyway, it's just an incredible story. But I want to go back to, I think you said you were 19 and you had just kind of made the decision that you wanted to transition to be a male, and that you had to quit the job you were at so that you could do that. Is that because you were working as a female, and then you wanted to then change and become a male, therefore you had to quit?
So I had shared with my boss that I was going to become a male. And so I was able to start to transition at that job there.
Yeah.
But it just became too much because, everybody knew me as, as a female. And now I'm trying to walk out being a man, and it was just weird for them. And it got really heavy. So I'm like, okay, I just need to quit. I need to find a different job.
Yeah.
And so that's why I left.
Be in a position, where you were hired as a man.
Right.
Okay. Another thing that's pretty incredible about your story is, so you were attending a Lutheran church at the suggestion of your, this woman that you were living with and her two daughters, right? And that was the church where the pastor basically said, "You're not welcome here." Is that right?
Yeah, so I was raised Lutheran, and it was actually a Christian church that I went with.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How were you able to separate? I think for most people, having gone through that experience, would be angry at the Lord, and consequently would want nothing. That's kind of the typical story we hear, is that you're scarred by that, and you just distance yourself from anything that has to do with God or Christianity. How are you able to separate that experience from what this experience was, what this person did to you, and your beliefs on who God was at that time?
Sure. Um, One of the things that comes to mind was the feeling that I understood that wasn't God. When I look back on that, I really feel like the Lord protected my heart. And it's like, you know what, that's man. That's not me. And, also I was so emotionally detached that, it kind of just went, okay, whatever. And there was a part of me that expected rejection. So
Yeah.
living as a man, that was kind of a written law that, you know what, when they find out, you're going to be rejected. And when I was accepted, that was totally amazing thing. But my first thing was, you're going to reject me. So I am already prepared for that. Um, I don't know if I ever really put God in that equation as far as him rejecting me. But again, I was so emotionally detached. I don't know if, um, I can honestly tell you, I didn't feel anything other than, okay, oh, well, kind of expected that.
Yeah.
It was just like, yeah, no big deal. That was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible to see just how, like you said, God protected you even in those moments. You look at your story as a whole, you see that once again, I felt like he was with you that whole time. So then I guess, was that the first time you heard God's audible voices? You described you were going to this new church, and you had a girlfriend at this church. And after, I guess, your breakup, is this what like prompted, kind of, God reached out and said, "Are you? What did he say? Are you willing now? Are you ready now?"
Yeah, so it was, I had dated this girl for about 5 years and then I jumped into a rebound relationship. And it was then that when I got out of that relationship, that the Lord said to me, "Will you now? Will you now?" And one of the things I forgot to say is that in that year relationship in the rebound, I had gotten into a very deep pornography addiction. It was super bad. I viewed pornography every day or as much as I could. I viewed it at least once a day and multiple times if I was able. And at that point, when the Lord called to me, I'd gotten out of that relationship. The Lord calls to me, "Will you now? Will you now?" And I say yes to the Lord. It took me about 3 months later before I realized that when I said yes to him, he had delivered me from the pornography addiction.
Wow.
I was a little slow, but one day it was kind of, I don't know if I woke up or what the deal was, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have not viewed pornography for 3 months. This is amazing. It wasn't this drive, because it was almost like a drug of choice. It was almost like I had to have this fix. And yeah, when I said yes, he delivered me. And I got to say, I'm still free from that. I haven't ever fallen back into that.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's just amazing to see, um, God just kind of peeling back those layers that you mentioned. It was a 4-year process from that point until you kind of made the decision to transition back to being a female.
Mhm.
And despite all that, you were active and God was still using you to minister to others in that position. So um, it's pretty incredible. And then from there, it was you said it was like 5 years that you were at Portland Fellowship.
Yeah. So it was 5 years. And then I was at a place where I could cross over back into being a woman. A lot of the testosterone effects had worn off. A lot of changes had happened. And I had been off the hormones for probably 5.5 years. And then, my voice it's lightened some, but that's hard for me to judge. But a lot of my hair grew back. I was a bodybuilder when I lived as a man, so a lot of the muscle tone went down. I was able to present more as a woman, and there was still physical healing that still happened even after I went back to being a woman. But I was at that place where I felt like physically now I'm able to cross back over, as well as emotional. And for the first time in my life, um, so I had top surgery when I lived in the lifestyle. I never did any of the bottom surgery. And so for once in my life, when I had my breast restored, I realized that for the first time in my life, my emotions, my physical body the way I think it all matches. I have never had that before. There was always something that was out of sync, something that I always longed for, always wanted, but for the first time it all matched. And when I came to that realization, I was like, this is amazing. This is what healing looks like. This is what being whole in Christ looks like. And I'm still blown away by how all of that happened. It was an amazing process. And then I just continued on. The Lord continued to move me in the way of ministry after that as well.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Portland Fellowship, like what it is, what you guys do, and what you're doing now.
Sure. So the Portland Fellowship is located in Portland, Oregon, and we have a discipleship program called Taking Back Ground. And it's a 2-year program. And we have the first year kind of covers, the roots and causes. How did you get here? What were your family dynamics? What do you believe? And then the second year deals more with the relational, making friends, and who do you tell, who do you disclose, and how do you stay safe, how do you guard your heart. And so year 2 builds on year 1, and each lesson builds on the other. And so we go from October to May, the end of May. And what we do is we go 2 months on, and then we take December off because of the holidays. It just gets crazy in there. People miss, they need to travel or whatever. So we start back up in January, and we have January and February. And then we take March off, and we have a retreat, a weekend retreat during that time. It's changed a little bit since COVID. And then April and May, we meet back up. And then at the end of May, we have a graduation for the year 2 participants. And the reason that we take those months off is because we found that rather than just, going through, kind of white knuckling the program, when they get a month off, they are eager to come back, because we found that there's more people that complete the program that way than, like I said, white knuckling through it. And then they drop out like halfway because it's just so intense.
Yeah. Makes sense.
They get a break.
So this is just someone that's struggling in this area will volunteer to join this program. And how do people know about Portland Fellowship, and how do people find out about this ministry?
Sure. So we have a website, portlandfellowship.com, that you can go to. And Taking Back Ground is for those who want to go. They have unwanted same-sex attraction, and they want to find healing and hope in Jesus. And you can sign up. Now with COVID, we had to do it a little bit different. So we offered for the first year, this year, a year 1 Zoom. And so we have people from Trinidad, all throughout the United States that join in on that. And then we still have our in-house meetings. We have a house where we minister out of. And so we still have a year 1 and year 2 that we can meet in person. There's also Taking Back Ground online that you can do. You'll have a mentor, so you'll go through that. You'll do the lessons, answer the question, and then you'll submit your questions. And then your mentor reads through that and gives feedback on that, or gives you further questions. There's that. We've also had Taking Back Ground online, and people have used that program to do a group in their church. We also have a Hope group that also features. So that's more for friends and family, parents of those, they have loved ones that are struggling with SSA or transgender. So there's 2 tracks in there. One is for the parents, and that's online as well. They go through, they can do it with a church or a group, or they can do it individually. So there's one for gay and lesbian SSA struggles. And then we have the transgender struggle that's in there, that's for parents, for both, online, and if they want to do a group. We also have one for youth. And that one just escaped my mind. I can't remember it at the moment, but so Taking Back Ground is for those who are 18 and older. And for the ones, it's called Reach Truth. And so for the younger ones, 17 younger and 17, then they can go on. And it's similar to Taking Back Ground, but it's more geared towards the youth population, their culture. And so it's the same type of thing. You go on, you do the questions, you have a mentor submit your questions, they go back and they give you feedback. And there's 5 days that also, while you're doing the lesson, because you read the material, and then there's 5 days where you answer questions, and there's like 2 to 3 questions, sometimes 4 questions per day. And then during those 5 days, you also get like a little devotional sent to you. And so you can read through that. And that has to do with the topic of that chapter. So you get 5 days of devotional that's about that topic for that. And so that's basic. We also have, well, for the Hope group, they meet once a month, and it's the first Fridays of the month. And because of COVID, they've done it to Zoom. So if they're interested in that, there's a Facebook page you can go to, just called Hope Group, and you become a member there. You like the page or whatever, and then you can sign up to do the Zoom call for the Hope Group. And then it's parents that get together. We recently, our restrictions for COVID had come down a little more in Portland, so we went back to Zoom. But we were meeting in person, and it's parents getting together, sharing about their children and praying together and praying for each other. Sometimes there's a teaching, sometimes there's somebody that comes and gives their testimony. I've come and give my testimony and then answer questions for parents. So there's a Q&A. So we try to reach everybody, try to offer something for everything that we can think of to bring hope.
Wow. I mean, it sounds such an incredible ministry, and it's highly encouraging, the work that you guys are doing there. But I also have to confess, when I first heard about this, and, part of it made me sad, just because, I think about, this is, in my mind, is a rarity. It's not common to hear about this type of ministry. And it saddens me that, more churches aren't reaching out to this community for help. And so, it's within Christianity in the local church. From my experience, what I see is kind of like two extremes. We have some denominations that, that they don't want to be hateful, they don't want to turn people off, and so they just set the lifestyle, and and that's how they deal with it. And then on the other extreme, which part of your story, there's this fear of man. We don't know how to deal with it, so we don't want it to permeate. We're scared of, and so we push away, or we want to make a stand for truth at the expense of the believer, right? The person that we're trying to reach.
Right.
And so in both cases, we see the harm that plays. And I think, for a large part, from my experience, like I said, I just don't think a lot of churches are equipped, to dealing with this. And even in your case, you were supported, at your church, but even still, the support, it was, you had to bring in Portland Fellowship, third party, but not all communities and cities have that type of ministry to reach out, which is great that you now have the ability to reach more people through Zoom, which I think is fantastic. But speak to that balance of, as the church, condemning the sin without condemning the sinner. And how does the church go about remedying this I guess outreach?
Sure. So I think if the church is able to look at, when anybody comes in from the LGBTQ community and they're struggling and they're still in the lifestyle, they're looking for truth, I think what they need to see is that those who are coming from that community, what you're witnessing is the fruit of a deeper woundedness. That what they're doing, it's not who they are, but that's all they know to do to get those unmet needs met. We all have that deeper thing of wanting to be loved. And there was something that was missed growing up. There was something, maybe a lot of times the people that come in, they've been raped, they've been sodomized, they've been molested. There's a sexual component to them that has given them a lie that either I'm gay because I was raped by, my brother or the neighborhood boys or whatever. So therefore I'm gay, and the common thing is that there's a passive dad and a dominant mom. And so, there's no support from their dad. They just don't feel loved by their dad. So they're looking for that need in other men to find that met, and they don't know who they are as men either. Same with women, there's a conflict with mom and they associate with dad. So therefore they find, women are safer. So I'm going to go with a girl because she's more nurturing. I missed out on that nurturing. That's one of the things that I missed out, was the nurturing from my mom. And so going into the lifestyle, though I wanted to be a man, I still longed for that nurturing from my mom. And so I found women that were very nurturing, very giving, very loving. At the same time, to protect myself, I wanted to be a man. And so some of the women that you see that are lesbians, they're tough, they butch, they're dyke. And the reason that they're that way is that is a self-protective layer that you're looking at, saying, you're not going to hurt me ever.
Yeah.
And so they come off with this tough exterior and they don't want you to break through. They want to be a lesbian because they believe that's what it takes to make them happy. And when you understand that that is just all brokenness, they're wearing their brokenness on the outside. And if you're able to look beyond that and go, that person is super wounded. And it's not about being gay. It's not about LGBTQ at all. It's about that relational issue underneath. I'll tell you, everything that the Lord dealt with had nothing to do with, me wanting to be with women, but everything to do with hating being a woman. All those relational things that I took away thinking it's bad to be a woman. And the Lord's like, no. And then he would meet me and they were all relational issues: abandonment, emotional abandonment, rejection of who I was as his little girl. My dad never knew how to love me as his little girl. And my mom didn't know how to nurture that. And so there's all this relational need underneath. And it's really hard because, the gay and lesbians can go in, and unless they confess, I struggle with this. It's really hard to tell that they struggle. And so they're welcomed into the church until it's found out their sin. When a transgender comes in, depends. Now, I was pretty deceptive. I looked like a man. So you would have, if, I can show you pictures that I really look like a man. If you would have saw me on the street, you would have never known unless I told you. Yeah. And so unless they're truly deceptive about it, because that was my drive too. I want to be deceptive. I don't ever want to be known as a woman because that's just too scary. And so there's those, though, that come in that aren't that convincing. And so right away, they're judged by how they look rather than being able to see beyond, that guy's transgender. So he's wearing his pain on the outside, or she's wearing her pain on the outside. And it's recognizing that that's pain. We shouldn't be offended by that, because there's tons of people that we meet that, I shouldn't say tons, but there's people that we meet that are also in a deceptive lifestyle. They're having an adulterous affair. They're cheating. They're taking all this money from their company, and we welcome into church. Hey, how's it going? We associate that, maybe even invite them out to lunch, not understanding that they too are in deception. It just looks different than those in the LGBTQ community. Yeah. And so we look at that, and that's what we judge, is by what we see, rather than understanding that their heart is a mess. Their life is a mess. They're a walking wound, if you will. Yeah. And that's what needs to be looked at, is that's not who they are. They don't know who they are. They're trying to figure out who they are and protect themselves all at the same time.
Yeah, that's incredible insight. And you put it so well, because I think, for a lot of people, if they saw someone that was on drugs in the church, they wouldn't like label that person, this person's a drug addict, therefore there's no room for them here. Right. We were able to separate, as the drugs being the outlet for pain that they're experiencing, and you make a correlation, for those in the LGBTQ community as well. It's really, it's the same aspect. This is, we can't just look at this as their whole identity. You know, they're separate from, you know, what you described, this that they're wearing on the outside. So that's great. I want to get into kind of your own story, where you described from a very young age. You said you remember having these feelings at the age of 4, of this idea that you were, you know, born the wrong gender. So I kind of want to have a discussion on nature versus nurture, because, you know, you had that all along, but then you also described sort of I guess what's the word I'm looking for? There were things along the way that sort of uh, you had affirmations. You mentioned, you know, you had the relationship between your father, with your mother, you know, the sexual abuse, the affirmation you got from your young friends. So you had all these things that sort of affirmed you in that direction. So how big of a role did your upbringing and circumstances play in the decision to change? And could things have turned out differently under more ideal circumstances?
Sure. I believe, you know, because when between 0 to 5, you know, kids are only in their family unit. Sometimes they go to preschool, you know, but usually around 5, they start kindergarten. So this 0 to 5 years, the informative years, you know, that's where they're kind of picking up who they are as their identity.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, before I can remember, I would observe the abuse that went on in my parents. I didn't have the tools to look at that and go, oh, my dad's just a jerk. That's no reflection of me. But I took those things on because they were at my mom, and my mom is supposed to be this role model. She's a woman, I'm a girl. I'm going to grow up, and these things are going to be true of me too. Now, you know, I don't remember thinking that. I just know I took those things in.
Yeah.
And, you know, so those lies began this foundation and this belief system that it's not safe to be a woman. I'm not going to be safe. This is what my life will look like should I continue to grow up as a woman. And, you know, I'd look at my mom, and she was a victim. She was an abuse victim, and she acted like a victim. You know, there was times I can remember growing up, she would come in my room and just cry because my dad is, you know, abusing her verbally. I would hear the fights. I would hear the things that he said to her. I only saw him hit her twice. You know, twice is still too many, but it was, you know, it was enough to go, oh, that could happen to me too. And so with this belief system, you know, or these lies, it created this whole belief system that if I'm somebody else, I'm going to be safe. If I'm somebody else, I will be loved, because I never felt loved. My dad never told me he loved me, ever. I have no recollection of that. My mom only told me that she loved me when she was looking for her affirmation. And, you know, so she was taking from me rather than filling me up with love. She was wanting me to affirm her as being loved. And the interesting thing looking at that is that the husband is supposed to affirm his wife as far as her being loved. And then that way she can pour that out to her children. So to a degree, when she was looking from that from me, I was kind of in that place of a husband.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You know, telling her that she's loved.
Right.
And I look back on that and I'm like, okay, wow, that's powerful. You know, it seems like a minor thing, but it speaks tons into that kid. You know, it spoke tons into me. It affirmed those lies that were already there. So again, I think at a very early age, the kids are able to observe this stuff. They're aware of what's going on. They don't have the tools to understand, you know, these are bad. This is not a reflection of me. That's not who I am. They take it on, and it's an environment, you know, and if there's no other thing in there speaking that, no, you're good. You're my daughter. I love you. If there's none of that affirmation, they have to make their own conclusions with what they have. Yeah. And they can't articulate that I feel like I should be a boy, or they're afraid to because it's very shameful. I always felt ashamed of how I felt, though I was going to pursue it because I didn't know any different. Yeah. You know, and my life was a fruit of all of those lies that I believed about who I was. And growing up with, or hearing stories about those who have grown up with abusive families, again, a lot of the women have been raped, they've been abused, men have been abused sexually. There's always an element of pornography in there. They were introduced either at a very young age to pornography and then later raped, or they were raped and then introduced to pornography. They kind of go hand in hand. There's been maybe in my whole 28 years, there's maybe been 2 people that I have talked with that have not had sexual abuse. And I'm like, can I touch you? Are you real? Do you exist? It's amazing, and if there's not that affirmation of who you are as a kid, you're my good boy, you're my great daughter, look at you, you're beautiful, good job, way to go, son.
Yeah.
You don't really know, because what I've learned is it's your dad to really call you out into who you are and build that up in you. And it's your mom that nurtures that. She's the one that, stirs that up in you. And together, your mom and dad complement who you are. And that's when you grow up and you understand, I'm a man and I have a purpose, or I'm a woman and I can do this. There's that confidence that's in there. And the mom also instills a sense of being, and your dad, also calls that out in you as far as who you are and your sense of being. And without that, you don't know where you belong if there's no sense of being. You're trying to figure that out the whole time. And the LGBTQ community is really good about accepting people in who are questioning, am I gay? Am I trans? They're like, yes, you're gay. Be who you feel. That's the truth. And yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that your MO, your prerogative was to not parade yourself as someone who's transgender, but you really wanted to just be known as a man. And you said you're 28 years removed from that. So I just want to, if I can, I have a couple pictures on your website. You have like your written testimony, and there's a couple pictures you have yourself as a man, and then yourself, after, I guess after transitioning back. So I wanted to kind of, have you comment on those pictures and just kind of hear your thoughts now, looking back at those 2 different positions in your life. That's
sure.
okay. So here's you as Keith.
Yeah.
You are very convincing. Like I said, I would never question that. But when you see that picture, just what comes to mind?
Well, it's interesting because I remember living that way. I remember that season in my life, but there's also this place of like, wow, who is that? I remember living that life. I remember interacting with people as a man. I remember living as a man, doing those things, as a man. But there's been so much healing in my life that I can only remember. I can't associate with it.
Yeah.
And there's a picture I have as a little girl where I'm 5 and I'm sitting on Santa Claus's lap. And it's the same kind of thing. I remember going there. I remember him sitting me on his lap. And I remember him giving me that candy cane. But who was that little girl?
Yeah.
It's like I have these memories, but there's no association with how I felt about that or that I was even a little girl.
Wow.
It's totally disassociation of who you are.
Yeah, because you're a new person now. Yeah.
Well, it's a survival thing too.
Also, yeah.
It's a coping thing because that's not who I am anymore. That person's dead. This is who I am.
Yeah. So here's a picture of you, I guess, shortly after you had converted back. So what do you think when you see that photo?
Yeah, I remember that being made up. That was quite a day. That was a big deal. And I remember being made up. I was like, you know what? You're beautiful. I never thought that before. I was like, wow. because my fear in going back to being a woman is that I would be mistaken for a man trying to be a woman rather than coming out of a lifestyle. I'm now being accused of being transgender the other way, and it's not the truth.
Right.
And that did happen a couple of times. People thinking, well, you're just a man, use that dressing room over there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm a woman, And so there was times I had to stand up for that. So that was hard. But after I got all made up, I called a friend and I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be seen as this woman that I was made up as. So we went and we walked around the mall, just walked around the mall because I'm like, this is amazing. Look at this. Because for me, it was like, I can really pass as a woman. I was really afraid that wouldn't happen, though I knew that's how the Lord called me to be. I'm walking back into who he created me to be, but can I pass as that? Because look at what I did. Look at what I've done. I've done all these things to hinder that. But yeah, I was walking around the mall just going, oh, this is pretty cool. This is really great. I can be seen as a woman.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, I love that picture. Say picture, says 1,000 words, and you can just kind of see the glow on your face. So I love that to hear you comment about that. So, I love hearing you talk about Portland Fellowship, and there's an outlet that you in a ministry you have for youth. What would you say to your younger self if you had that opportunity? You're in a lot of ways you're doing that through your ministry, but what would you say to yourself?
I would say to my younger self that I needed to ask more questions. I needed to be honest about how I felt. I needed to find a place where I could be safe.
Yeah.
And believe that there's people out there who are safe, who really intend to help you, not just affirm what you feel, but find those that bring the other side. Okay, if I'm going to be living as a man, what's my ramifications? How do I not live as a man? How do I deal? Because I don't know that I'm broken. All I know is this is what I feel. So find someone that's going to question, why do you feel that way? Not what you feel, but why do you feel that way? Yeah. What is it that's telling you that being a woman isn't safe? And really finding someone who loves you that will press into that, because you're not going to know. You're not going to understand. All you know is the way you feel. I feel I'm a man, and that's all you can remember. You don't have any other memories of ever wanting to be a woman. All you know is that I've always wanted to be a man. I've always felt this way. So therefore, I'm probably born that way. That's a conclusion that you can make because you've never felt any different. Yeah. But it's finding that person, and if they're saying, well, I don't know how to help you, then saying, then who can help me find someone who can, who's out there. There are people out there who want to reach out. There are people who want to see you whole, that long for you to be different, to find that wholeness and that hope in Jesus. And it's really difficult to do that on your own. I do know people who have transitioned without the help of the Lord, but it was really rough. And I think even then, though you may go back to your biological sex, there's still a place in there that needs to be healed. There's still a place of wholeness that's being missed. Yeah. So it's finding that safe person. Who is that safe person? And if there's no one, then it's figuring out who I can talk to and asking those questions. Because once you enter into that lifestyle, like I felt, like I said, I felt euphoric and I thought I had arrived. You are now totally in deception. And it's looking at those people who have gone before you and they're saying, no, don't do this. It's in deception. Reaching out to them saying, I've heard your story. Can you just tell me? There's other people out there who have done as I have done. Yeah. And they're willing to talk to you too. And it's finding them saying, I'm confused. I've talked to a few people that are like, this is the road I'm going on. Why shouldn't I go? Yeah. And so just talking with them, and being truthful, somebody who's going to give you the really hard truth. And that's what really helped me was when people gave me the hard truth and said, have you thought about that? No, I didn't. Never thought about that.
Yeah.
And then taking that away and thinking about it. What is the risk, of me going back to being a woman? What is, what would go wrong? What would go right? What if there's real freedom in being who I'm created to be? What if there is a purpose for me to be a woman? What if there was an intentional creation, an intentional God who created me that said, I created you on purpose for a purpose. And I want you to fulfill that person or that purpose. So it's finding, that person who will walk you through that place. And again, it's not always about your fantasies and your sexual deviances. It's about really who you are, because all those things, the sexual deviances, those are just kind of byproducts of what you're embracing. And once you begin to turn that and look as far as who you are for your identity, those things fall away. One of the biggest struggles is pornography and masturbation. And when they begin to turn their heart and their life towards Christ, those things begin to dwindle. That need isn't there because it's a false sense of love. Because now they're finding the real love in those around them and through Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question because, your story, you mentioned, your same-sex attraction and pornography and how you had, pretty radical deliverance from that. I imagine those are still struggles from a lot of people that you minister to. So, how do you, what do you say to those that are still struggling in pornography or same-sex attraction, despite a longing to change, and they feel like they're kind of spinning their wheels with that?
Sure. So, even the women that I've dealt with, they have struggled with pornography. It's not just a guy thing. So in ministering to the women, I've asked them, so what got you there? What got you to the place of watching pornography? Let's back up. Let's look at what was the triggers. What was it? Was it a hard day? Were you feeling bad about yourself? Were you lonely? And so we began to go back and look at, okay, you know what? I was really struggling and I felt like I deserved to be pleasured. I watched this because, I wanted this false sense of intimacy. But then I said, okay, so you did that. And what was the payout? What'd you get out of that? And they're like, well, I felt dirty and now I'm ashamed and I feel guilty. And I said, okay, so now knowing that, the next time that comes, what is something that you think you can do to begin to turn away from that? What's a different option? And so as they begin to recognize this is my trigger, this is the thing that says, I need to watch pornography. I've had a bad day or I've been rejected. And so somehow pornography brings this sense of intimacy that they're loved as they watch this. Because, sex equals love. That's what our culture teaches. Sex equals love, love equals sex. And so if I'm able to view this, then I will feel loved. And so it's understanding, okay, so in those places of rejection, can you look at why you were rejected and look at the truth of who you are in that they may reject you, but it's not really your, how can I say, it's looking at that's not a personal thing. Rejection isn't always a personal thing. It's their opinion. Yeah. And it's like, so does their opinion define you? And so it's a process of going through and being honest about how that made you feel. Was it rejection? And then also, we do have a will. And so it's engaging our will to choose something different, to put those things in place for accountability. I'm going to masturbate and I'm going to watch pornography. Wait, my friend said I could call her and when I'm struggling, and so they do that. They'll call a friend and they're like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Somebody that they find safe. There's times where they just fail. But it's helping them to understand, okay, well, we need to help you figure out how to make a different choice, but I want you to know that you're still amazing in that. It doesn't define who you are.
Yeah.
Could you did something different? Maybe, but what you did doesn't define who you are. It doesn't make you less, of a person. It doesn't say anything about who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's helping them to see that it doesn't define them. What they do doesn't define them. It's what they do, but it's not who they are.
Yeah. That's incredible. One of the most powerful parts of your stories, you mentioned when you were confronted in that church that you were attending, and you sort of knew where this was going, and you mentioned that your response was different in the fact that you admitted to being a woman that is now living as a man. Talk about confession and the importance and the power of confession.
Right. So confession, even after that point, as I learned, when I tell the truth, that opens the door for the Lord to really reach you. The longer we stay in deception, the more lies that we are able to believe.
Yeah.
And I believe that when I opened that and I confessed the truth, it was the Lord that opened the door for him to breathe into my life and to bring truth. There's freedom in truth. Is it scary to tell the truth? Absolutely. But there's always so much relief. I talked to a person just recently, and she had been hiding and hiding and hiding. And finally, she told the truth. And it is a risk, because you don't know, is the person I'm talking to, they supposedly they're safe, but how are they going to react? What are they going to say to me? Is this the one thing that they're going to go, I've had enough of you. We're done. I can't deal with this. But if they're truly on your side and you risk and you tell the truth, it is so freeing, because it's then, like I said, healing can begin. You can begin to embrace the truth, because when you're hanging on to a lie, you can't hold on to something and grab for another. You have to let go of something to reach for the other. It's kind of like when they capture monkeys, they put a banana in the box and the hole is just big enough for the monkey to stick his hand through. And once he grabs the banana, he can't get it out.
Right.
Because, his hand goes in like this, and then he's trying to pull it out through the hole. All he has to do is let go of that banana. But once he's got a hold of that and he won't let go, he's captured. It's the same with deception. When we grab a hold of that lie and we hang on to that lie, we are now captured into the darkness. And once we let go of that, we're able to go free and then hang on to the truth. We have to be holding something. So you get to choose between the truth and the lie. And the truth is always scary, because all you've known is the lie. And what if I let go of that lie? Then who am I? It's a very scary exchange that can go on. But once you reach for the truth, then God can come in and totally transform you and begin to speak truth, and healing can happen.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredibly put. So you've touched on this a little bit. And one of my favorite parts of your story that you mentioned, someone in your church, after they found out that you were a woman, they noticed and saw that that nurturing side of you when you were living as a man. So our culture today is we're blurring the lines on what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman. We're told that all that's on a spectrum and that can change based on your feelings. So what does it mean to be a woman?
What does it mean to be a woman? There's an essence about both the male and the female, and there's really no way to blur that. So to be a woman, it's allowing the Lord to draw that out of you. So one of the qualities is being nurturing. Describing femininity is kind of like trying to describe red to someone who's blind, that's never seen a color, because it's not so much of being able to describe it as it is to be it.
Right.
Because I asked the Lord for a long time, Lord, what is the definition of feminine? What is the definition of feminine? What is the definition of feminine? No. And the Lord said, you are it. It's being feminine. It's not putting it on. It's not taking it off. It's who you are. So it's figuring out what is feminine for me, because I'm not a girly girl. I'm just not. Now, there are soft things that I like. And I saw that as I continued to walk back to being a woman, change came from the inside out. So as my heart continued to embrace who I was as a woman and realized that it's good, there was things that I reached for that were softer. I don't know how many trips I made to the Goodwill to take my man clothes to Goodwill and then buy new clothes. And each time they got a little softer and a little softer and more feminine and more feminine. So I think as we allow the Lord to heal who we are and call us into that place, there's a natural transition place, even for women who have always been women. They don't want to be lesbian. They've never wanted to be a man. There's still an understanding for them is, what does that look like for me as a woman? What are those things I embrace, and embrace them, and not being afraid of being soft, because that's not weakness. Yeah. That's tenderness. That's something to be embraced. And one thing that being a woman does is we have the ability to create a safe space, which draws people in. We create space for those who want to be comforted, who want to be nurtured, who want to be a part of something. Yeah. And that's attractive. There's an inner beauty that's attractive, and it's the Lord that continues to grow that in me. And there's a place of grace that women have. There's how can I put a graceful presence about them. And even though femininity can't always be defined, it when you see it. Yeah. I think about Julia Roberts. Yes, she's an actress. Yes, she's beautiful. But if you remove all those things, there's a quality about her that just says femininity. Yeah. Yeah. And you may not always be able to describe it, but when you see it, it, especially when it's healthy. And it's the same with men. There's this presence about them that you go, masculine. They're not intimidated. They can be soft and understand that that's not a weakness. That's, tending to somebody. Men go about nurturing differently, and women do too. But it's the essence of who we are and figuring out how to walk in that. And what does that look like for me? How do I embrace that? How do I clothe that? There's women that amazing, they have this amazing way to make up their face and do their makeup and wear clothes and stuff. And I'm like, I don't get that. That's not for me. But there's things about me that I can embrace as a woman and put them on. And I'm comfortable with that. That's not to say I can't dress up, because I have. I was a maid of honor in a wedding. So it's not like I can't wear a dress that's too much, but I can. It's not my first go-to, but if that's required of me, I can do that. I can embrace that side, because being a woman is also understanding that you represent the beauty of God and being comfortable in your beauty. How comfortable are you in your beauty? And there's times I want to dress up because I want to be beautiful, and understanding that I can represent that part of the Lord, and I can offer that without being intimidated by saying, you know what, I know I'm beautiful because that's what the Lord says about me, and resting in that, what he says about me.
Yeah, that's great. Sure, a really powerful point in your testimonies. We talked about, essentially the process of, dealing with the relational issues with your father, from, just God just kind of patiently dealing with you. You had the 2 weeks, before you were able to kind of have that, breakthrough. And we kind of see that emotion that kind of came through, really powerful. Hearing you speak about that. And then beyond that, you mentioned there was the forgiveness that had to take place. And then from there, the reconciliation. So what more can you tell us about, that process of reaching that point of forgiveness for your father?
Sure. I will say that it was a hard process. That was hard. That was probably one of the hardest things to do, because I realized that my dad had such an influence in speaking into who I was as a woman. And as I continued through that process, I came to the realization too, as I forgave my dad, that not all men were my dad. And because I had to look at, this is what my dad did. It's not what all men have done, but this is what my dad did. And
Yeah.
not all men are my dad.
Mm.
And that was really hard because, random men, as I was going through this process, random men would affirm me as a woman. And I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Because, okay, for one, you're not my dad. You're not accusing me of something. You're not, telling me that I'm worthless. You're holding the door for me and you're acknowledging me as a woman. You're giving me this place of honor and respect, holding the door for me, going, I see you. You're a woman. I'm a man. I'm going to hold the door for you. And so it affirmed me as a woman from a man. And when that was happening, I was like, it drew feminine out of me. And that's the other thing between the masculine and feminine. A healthy male and a healthy female, they can draw out that feminine or that masculine. They can affirm that. And when a man did that for me, I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I really like it. Yeah. And I can remember being hugged by a man, and I was undone. I was I was like, okay, I don't know what just happened, but this is weird. I'm kind of undone by this, and it was the weirdest feeling, but the greatest feeling at the same time. And that was when I began to realize, you know what? Men have something to offer me. Because before I was like, man, whatever, you don't get it. And when that started to happen, this was at the same time I'm working through forgiveness of my dad, releasing him. I began to see what men had to offer me, and it was good. And I was like, okay, so not all men are my dad. They have something good to offer me. So therefore, there really are safe men. And I began to see the safe men that the Lord had put in my life. Before, they were just men. They were a teacher or they were whatever. And then as I really looked at their character, I realized, you're safe and you have good intentions for me. The things that you do are to help me, because not just because I need help, but because you recognize me as a woman and you want to affirm that in me. That was an amazing breakthrough.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I was reading through your testimony on the Portland Fellowship website, and I think you mentioned it here as well. But I love that you talk about Psalm 139 as being an agent for change for you, because I know that I've had that experience, and many listeners have as well. It's just when the Word of God speaks to you personally, and you feel that that conviction to change, and it's incredible. So I've thought what I might do, if you don't mind, is read a portion from that chapter, a few verses, and have you comment on them.
Okay.
So this is the New Living Translation, Psalm 139, 13 through 18. It says, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand, and when I wake up, you are still with me.
Yeah. When I was living in the lifestyle, a friend called me and read that to me, and she was so excited because when she read that, she understood that the Lord knew her. And I'm on the other end of that phone, living as a man, going, oh no, what have I done? Because if you knit me together, what am I doing? And then, he brings it full circle, brings me back around to study out that scripture. And as I realized the ways that he knit me together and that it was good, knowing that he did that intentionally, going back to he put me together on purpose for a purpose, that it wasn't just some random act that he did, but he carefully put me together so I could represent him as a woman and I could do it well. But understanding that he knit me together with everything I would ever need to be a woman and to be successful as a woman. And that was an amazing thing for me to realize, because I was like, Lord, you thought of everything. You thought of everything when you knit me together. And then to think about, here I am in my mother's womb. Not only are you knitting me together when my mom's carrying me, but you're touching her. She has this opportunity to experience you too, as you're carrying me, or as she's carrying me. And I was like, Lord, that's a twofer, that's a 2-for-1 deal there. And I don't know if many women understand that, or what, they can experience when they're pregnant. And maybe there's more than what I know. But to think that, the Lord is knitting this baby inside you and he's touching you as he's doing it, that was incredible to me. Yeah. But then, where it said he had his plans for me, I realized that was one of the things, when he spoke to me, I've only ever saw you through the plans I've had for you.
Yeah.
I realized that scripture was true, that he had these things written out for me even before one of my days had come to be. He had those things written out for me. And even though I had created a whole different life, he still saw me just through those plans that he had written out for me. That was so amazing, because it talked to me of an intentional God, and that because he only ever saw me through that plan, he knew, how can I say, the feeling that I had was incredible, because I knew that he wouldn't give up on me. He hadn't given up on me. These are those plans, and I still want you to fulfill them. He still had this hope for me. He still had this dream, if you will, that she's going to fulfill these. I'm going to hold out, because these are the ones that I have for her, and it was specific to me, these are the things I'm going to have you do. And it's like, when I come into that realization, he's like, all right, you ready for the plans? Let's do this. Wow. I felt his excitement a lot over that. I got these plans for you. Oh, I can't wait to tell you about them. It was quite a feeling.
Yeah, that's incredible. All right, so I'm going to move on to some kind of lighthearted questions, and then we'll conclude. But so let's start with favorite Bible verse, Bible book, Bible character.
Okay, so my favorite verse of all time is Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will help you. Yes, I will. I usually have this. I will help you. Yes, I will. I just totally blanked. I will help you. Yes. Wow. It ends with, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.
Yeah.
And he gave that to me when I came out of the lifestyle. Oh, yes, I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I always get the strength and the help you mixed up. But I got that verse when I first came out of the lifestyle, and then he gave it to me the very next day through some random other thing. So I knew that I was on the right path with the Lord.
Yeah.
And since then, in the 28 years, every time I question, Lord, is that you? Fear not, for I'm with you. Every time he calls me into something new, or stretches me or challenges me, I'm like, Lord, I don't know, fear not, for I am with you. And New American Standard says, fear not, for I am with you. Do not look anxiously about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That verse is packed full of promises. He's going to strengthen me. Yeah. He's going to, help me overcome. And where he talks about the righteous right hand is fellowship, and I will uphold our fellowship. So that was amazing. My two favorite books, I have two. Isaiah, I love Isaiah. and his prophetic voice and the things that he brings. And even though some of them can be rather harsh, there's also hope in them as well, and promises that are in there. And then Ephesians, because I always loved Ephesians, even when I lived as a man. Ephesians was my favorite. Well, Ephesians is really about identity and the warfare, and I was like, oh, wow. Well, no wonder I always loved it.
Yeah.
And then there's always Psalms. Psalms is always my go-to as well. Characters in the Bible. I always prayed to have the heart of David and a life like Paul, because both of them really knew the Lord. The Lord said of David, he's a man after my own heart. Not, I didn't want to be a man, but I wanted to be known as someone who's after God's own heart. And then I think about the life of Paul and how he did everything. He was so full of truth because of the relationship that he had, with the Lord, and how he was so intentionally following him. There is just this about Paul and the Lord. And so I'm like, give me the heart of David and a life like Paul, because I want to know you from all those sides. And I'm sure that Paul had a heart for the Lord as well, and David was a warrior. And so I just saw where they fit together, and I'm like, those are my men. Those are my guys. I want to have those two things that they have.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard Isaiah as someone's favorite book of the Bible. I'm actually reading through that now. But it's an intimidating book because of its size, and it's, it just be confusing reading through the prophecies, but I agree. It does show God's sovereignty and plan, and we kind of see the patience he has with Israel, disciplining them and bringing them back. So it is a beautiful, and there's some beautiful prophecies in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next I want to ask you favorite movies, books, music.
So music, I was a musician, so I kind of like it all. I don't really have, I guess it depends on the atmosphere. If it's worship, of obviously worship music. If I'm cleaning the house, let's play techno, let's get into that. I love Western music. I would joke and I would say, when I was in the lifestyle, I always wanted to be a cowboy. That was the thing. And I say, now I want to marry a cowboy. So I still love the Western music. I just like it all. And I like the symphony stuff. There's a couple of pieces of Beethoven that's played by a French horn. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that puts me up on cloud nine. I just really see how music can move you in a way that really nothing else can.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just lifts you up. Favorite movies? One of my favorite movies of all time, I will say, is E.T., because it's just funny. It's funny, and I don't know. I've always just loved that movie. I love the character of E.T., his little innocence.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And what was the other one? Favorite?
Books.
So when I came out of lifestyle, there was a lot of books that I read, and a lot of them were about intercession and the prophetic gifting. So I guess I would have to name authors: Rick Joyner, Francis Frangipan, Dutch Sheets. They were ones that really helped me spiritually. I felt like they mentored me by their writings. Because I would read that and I'd be like, that's possible? That I want that. I want that, Lord. I want to know how to do that. And it just encouraged me to understand there was more than just the struggle. There was other things that the Lord put within me that I can pursue. And the hope of that in those books, that could be true of me. So it was anything about intercession or prophetic, deliverance. Those were the books that I would read. I would gravitate to, and still do.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so these are last two questions. What do you like to do in your free time? And then if you could have dinner with 5 people, dead or alive, who would they be?
So what I like to do in my free time, I have roses. And so I have like 15 rose bushes. I love, you hack them off in the winter, and then you watch them begin to grow again. And then the beauty of the roses and how each one opens up. I feel like different roses, they have different needs and they respond differently. So it's kind of like knowing the personality of your bush and, how to take care of it and help it. I love gardening. Just, it's so fruitful. And a lot of the things that the word talks about, as far as getting down to the root, if you pull out the dandelion, you break the root off, it comes back. But if you get that entire root, that weed does not come back. And it's the same with our struggles. If we deal with the entire root of that struggle, it doesn't come back. You're free of that. And so just seeing the gratification of the work of my hands and my yard and, the things the beauty that can come out of that. I just love that. And then the other thing is cycling. I love cycling. I love doing the long cycle rides. So like I've done probably about 500 or 600 milers. I love them, because you get to see so much, and it's amazing to go, I can go that far on my bike. It takes 8 hours, but I can go that far on my bike. Yeah. That is amazing to me. Now for the 5 people, I've thought about this and I'm like, this is really hard, because I think I would have a dead table, which would be Abraham, David, Paul, Peter, and Esther. I would love to have them at one table. And then my other table, I had 2 mentors. Both of them were named Kim. They sowed greatly into my life. I feel like I'm the fruit of their labor, really. And then 2 good friends, Julie and Lori. We've been friends forever. And then Phil Hobesall, he was the director of Portland Fellowship. He's actually the founder, and he has poured into me as well. And not just spiritually, but he's a handyman. So he would come over and help me fix stuff, show me, teach me, how to do stuff. And so, yeah, I was like, okay, I don't know how would I do 2 tables? I have to have 2 tables. It's not going to work any other way.
That's cool. All right. Well, and this has been a real pleasure. Why don't you tell us, how to get in touch with you or Portland Fellowship, and any parting words?
Sure. So again, Portland Fellowship website is www.portlandfellowship.com. There's also testimonies on that website. Tons of testimonies of people who have come into freedom, walked out of, the gay lifestyle, transgenderism. It's tremendous stories. Amazing how God touches the hearts of those. And, anybody who surrenders, he is right there to walk with them. You can reach me. My email at Portland Fellowship is KathyGrace at portlandfellowship.com. And if you don't get an opportunity to write that down, it's KathyGrace at portlandfellowship.com. Should you write it down and lose it somewhere, you can still go to the Portland Fellowship web, and they have an office email that you can go to. It'll go to a box, and Jason Thompson, who's the executive director, he monitors that box and he will forward those to me without a problem. He's really good about very timely. So if they came in, I'd probably get it like 10 minutes later. So he's really good about watching that. And then if you want to talk to me, I'm open to that. Probably the best way is to start an email conversation. I really like to do phone appointments, because then I know you're available and I'm available. I have tried just calling people randomly and then we play voicemail tag, and it's easier to do the email thing and then set something where we both have it on our schedules so I can talk. But I'm open to talking via phone, via Zoom, however that would work for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'll just say, hearing your story is ministered to me, and I just think it's a beautiful story, and I praise God for that. And thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samuel, for all of the opportunity to tell my story too.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure, and God bless.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to share with somebody you know. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on your favorite audio podcasting platform, leave us a rating and review. To get in touch with me, email me at the weirdchristianpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll catch you on the next one.